Guys, Mars Thinking here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so today we had another announcement. We've been getting sort of regular daily tweets from the official Dokkan accounts every day around the same time, 10 AM for me here in the UK, giving us little snippets of information about the anniversary, upcoming content and all this kind of stuff. Some of them have been more significant than others. I think the one from 2 days ago was literally just mentioning the GT story event that's being revamped into like a DB story. So not exactly a huge hype piece of news. But then of course yesterday's one was the one announcing the 10th anniversary battle event revamp, which obviously had the new image with the part 2 LRs on it, which obviously I made a video talking about that yesterday. Seems to imply that we are going to be getting some unique skill orbs for the part 2 characters from previous LRs, from previous anniversaries. So that's obviously something that is very exciting. There's been so much stuff and so much info for this anniversary. Like the celebration is already just seemingly jam-packed full of content and interesting things. And we haven't even got to the start yet. I know we were talking on the stream earlier today, people are absolutely itching for the celebration to start. Of course, as you know from the login screens and just by the general date at this point, 3 days to go from today. So very, very exciting. The live stream obviously revealing the full info, the animations and all that kind of crazy stuff is going to be on Tuesday. Very much looking forward to that. I will be live reacting to it, so do make sure you are following along with the channel, subscribe, all that good stuff, and hopefully we'll see you there. But today the information that we got was about the new Blue Zone stage, or the Supreme Magnificent Battle stage that is going to release. So new challenge event, Supreme Magnificent Battle, Gathering of Super Warriors edition coming soon. Super Warriors have gathered there, get ready to face them. And we've got the splash image here. So you can see on the image, Gathering of Super Warriors edition, we've got a Super Saiyan Goku at the front. Then we've got Pan, Trunks, and DB Saga Yamcha. So I did retweet this with like Super Warriors, and there's DB Yamcha. I thought that was kind of funny. Somebody did reply saying that Super Warriors is like another translation term for like the Z Fighters, which I guess that kind of makes sense for the future iteration of Yamcha, but not necessarily the Dragon Ball Saga one. But of course, one thing that could be really interesting about this is we've obviously got one character from each of the, I don't want to say arcs, because that's obviously with each of the series is, I guess you should say, because we've got OG Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and Dragon Ball GT, each represented by one of these characters. Now, obviously, Gathering of Super Warriors, I mean, it's pretty vague what this can mean necessarily, but I think it would be very interesting if it was splitting up the series, because we've seen with a couple of the stages from the Vegeta story Red Zone and the Goku story Red Zone that we've been getting a couple of stages that are a little bit longer. And so by having a stage like that could be entirely themed around, like if one of the stages was like just OG Dragon Ball, then each of the enemies could be various different characters from throughout that saga. So the first thing I decided to do was look up each of the like actual arts, because they're using specific, none of these are new arts of course, for the enemies in the cards. So if we switch over to the wiki here, you can see the DB Saga Yamcha is the TUR from the World Tournament that awakens into the LR Yamcha and Poir. Obviously Yamcha, Poir is technically in the art and is in like the thumbnail, but obviously they've just cut from the actual card art, just the Yamcha part out of the top. So we've got Yamcha, then the Pan, funnily enough, is not from any of the like premium Pan units that we have. It's actually a random SR Pan. So you've probably seen her turn up in a bunch of summons. I'm not someone that keeps SRs, so I don't hang on to any of these copies, but we've got her. Then the Goku, interestingly enough, is a Super Saiyan Goku. So he's on all the categories you would expect for a Super Saiyan Goku, but he's not actually on any of the like saga categories. So he's just a random Super Saiyan Goku, because he's not on any of the sagas. He's not on movie heroes. So I'm not really sure where this specific like Super Saiyan Goku is supposed to come from. He's a really old card, right? He came out in 2016. So, he was obviously around before categories were a thing. But as categories have been introduced, they've added them onto characters. So they either forgot about this guy or just couldn't really decide where he's supposed to be from. Because realistically, he should be from one of the sagas or one of the movies in theory, but he's just a generic Super Saiyan Goku. But, you know, he can represent Dragon Ball Z. And then, of course, the Trunks is the SSR for the Tech Transforming Trunks, the infinite stacking one. And, of course, he would represent Dragon Ball Super. So the interesting thing I was thinking about these stages is, I mean, Blue Zone and Red Zone, we've seen ones that literally only have, like, well, Heroes was a bit of a unique example. I was going to say the lowest I think we've seen is 4. Like the Boo Saga one only had 4 stages. The Heroes one had 3 when it first came out. But obviously any Heroes content is kind of unique in its specific way, that it was always very time limited, only out at that specific point of the year. But we have seen these events be as short as having like 4 stages. And if the stages themselves were quite long, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility for that to happen again. So I think it would be quite interesting if we have one of the stages, as I say, is for Dragon Ball Super, one for Z, one for GT, one for OG. And obviously that gives us quite a wide variety of characters that we can end up fighting, especially if we go in sort of chronological order from the series. Because if we take a look at the Dragon Ball Saga category, obviously the Blue Zone is mostly for superclass enemies, Red Zone is mostly extreme, although there has been the odd exception here and there, especially when, before the Blue Zone was a thing, right? Like we had the Red Zone Gammas, who are superclass characters. But obviously, I feel like this would start off, you know, if we start off at the beginning of the adventure, we could have Bulma. Obviously, in theory, you could start off with Goku, but, you know, Goku surely has got to be the last boss if we're getting a DB Saga themed Blue Zone stage, right? But we can start off with Bulma, depending on how early you want to get Roshi and Krillin in there. Obviously, Yamcha's going to be on there. We've seen him from the image. I mean, you could have Roshi and Jackie Chan in there if you are following on like the chronological order of the events. You could obviously have a Great Ape Kid Goku in there as well. And then, of course, potentially have the final... What would be interesting, I know he doesn't count as DB Saga, but if they were just, like, it's the category DB Saga, but if the event was themed around, like, OG Dragon Ball, then technically the last boss could be 23rd World Tournament Goku, even though he's not obviously on this category, because the direct JP translation was Boyhood Saga, so it only goes up to just before the 23rd World Tournament. But if the theme of the actual stage itself was just, like, Dragon Ball, it could go up to 23rd World Tournament Goku, which I think would be kind of cool. The difficult one to do is obviously when we get into Z, because Z is by far the longest. I mean, Super ended up being quite long. In fact, of total number of episodes, is Z still longer than Super? I'd have to double check. But Z, obviously, we have the major arcs, so we could pick out characters mostly from there. Like, I couldn't even bring up a category. I guess I could have brought up all 3 of, like, Saiyan Saga, 4 even. Saiyan Saga, Namek Saga, Boo Saga, and then Android/Cell Saga. I said those last 2 the wrong way around. But obviously this gives us a ton of options for different characters. And obviously, with, like I said, with some of these stages being a bit longer, there's no reason they can't have like 5, 6, potentially even 7 different bosses. Especially if they kind of tone down the difficulty a little bit on the earlier ones, at least, if they want to fit more characters in. Or they could just focus on primary picks from each of those main sagas from Z, right? So like Saiyan Saga, you could start off with like Goku and Piccolo, maybe, like the one that we have, the physical one. Start off with Goku and Piccolo, then have like Kaioken Goku. And then obviously moving into Namek Saga, you could have like Krillin and Gohan, and then Super Saiyan Goku, then moving into Android/Cell Saga. I mean, obviously it'd have to be kind of ending with Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, but maybe you could start off with like the Super Saiyan Trunks, because I guess that's kind of like, well, that's the weird gap between like Namek and the beginning of the Android/Cell Saga, but Trunks does arrive to tell them about the androids. So that'd be kind of interesting, have it go from like the AGL Trunks, like base, and then Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and then of course Majin Buu Saga. There's like so many different options from there, especially depending on how early you want to start. Like you could start off with, I guess, Goten, and then obviously that would go all the way up to fighting like, I think the GT duo as the last boss would obviously be good, like Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta. I think that one's a bit more tricky if you're trying to do like a stage that's based around the whole of Dragon Ball Z, because there are just so many different options. So maybe within the stage, rather than there being 4 stages, they will be broken down a little bit. But of course, with the Goku and Vegeta story ones, we already have stages that are broken down by the sagas. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ways they could do this. I mean, they could be splitting them in a completely different fashion. Like one of the stages could be Super Saiyans, one could be Goku family, one could be like Earthbred fighters or Earthlings. Like there's a bunch of different ways they can separate out groups of super class characters as a stage of enemies for a Blue Zone stage. So there's a bunch of different ways it's possible, but Z definitely feels like the hardest. And then of course, when it comes to like Super, with the superheroes, you know, the arcs in the actual anime, you know, we can go for, I guess, would they include the retelling of the movies? Because I guess you could have God Goku, then into like the ROF Blues, then going into the, I guess it'd be the Universe 6 tournament, so you'd have Kaioken Goku, then you'd have Sword of Hope Trunks, and then yeah, TOP I guess would end with like UI Goku. Again, it's kind of tough because you're either going to have lots of phases, or maybe they just split them into 2, right? So you have like Dragon Ball Z 1 and Dragon Ball Z 2, and then like Dragon Ball Super 1, Dragon Ball Super 2. Who knows? There's a bunch of different ways they could separate these out. GT is exactly the same, right, with Pan. You could have each of the different arcs broken down. I just brought up the GT Heroes thing. Obviously, the end one would probably be, I guess, the GT Duo. That would be kind of cool. Like, I liked the fact that we had these red zones that follow along the sagas, right? Like, we got the GT red zone was one of the first ones that came out, and it has the big extreme, like, characters from throughout the saga. And a super class version of that would be really cool, especially with, like, the final phase. You know, you'd go from, like, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta to the GT Duo, I think would probably be the ideal, like, final enemy. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting options here for this Super Warriors Blue Zone. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What do you think Super Warriors is specifically referring to? Do you think it just means super class? Is it a term for Z fighters? I mean, I guess technically all of the characters, Yamcha becomes a Z fighter, like technically referred to after, you know, the OG Dragon Ball. So you would refer to all those characters on the splash art as the Z fighters, I guess. But let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. What would you like to see most for a Super Warriors Blue Zone? Let me know all of that down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.